My ex called me a loser while I was driving her to works, so I let her get out at a gas station and drove off forever. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and until last year, I thought I was building a future with the woman I loved. My name's Ethan, and for most of my 20s, I worked my hands raw as a mechanic at a small shop outside town. The smell of oil and metal stuck to my skin no matter how hard I scrubbed, but I didn't mind it. It was honest work. Every paycheck, every early morning, every aching muscle, I believed it was all leading somewhere. That somewhere was Rachel. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately owned it. Smart, confident, ambitious. She worked a corporate job downtown, always in heels, always with perfect hair. I loved that about her, the way she carried herself, like she was meant for more. She didn't have a car, so every morning I drove her to work before heading to the shop. 40 minutes each way. I never complained. It felt good taking care of her. It made me feel needed. Sometimes I'd wake up early just to wash the truck and make sure it looked decent when I picked her up. I'd play her favorite radio station, buy her coffee on the way. She'd scroll through her emails while I talked about my plans, saving up to open my own garage, maybe moving to a better apartment someday. She'd nod, hum, or toss in a distracted "that's nice" while tapping away on her phone. At first, I told myself she was just busy, that her world was different from mine, full of meetings and deadlines. But lately, I'd started to feel a strange distance in the car, like I was talking to someone who'd already left the conversation miles ago. And deep down, I couldn't shake the thought. Maybe she was already driving toward a different future, one that didn't include me. It started small, little comments that didn't sting at first, but over time, they began to cut deeper. Rachel would laugh about how my hands were always so rough, or how my work clothes smelled like a garage exploded. She'd say it with a smile, like it was a joke, but the look in her eyes wasn't teasing. It was judgment, I remember. One morning, while I was driving her through traffic, she sighed and said, "Sometimes I wish you had a job where you didn't come home looking like you wrestled a car engine." I laughed it off, told her, "Hey, someone's got to keep the world moving." But she didn't laugh back. She just looked out the window and muttered, "Sure, someone has to." At first, I convinced myself she was just tired, long hours, high stress, the usual corporate burnout. But the comments didn't stop. They became more pointed. She'd mention how her coworkers were driven, well-spoken, polished. She started dropping one name more than the others. Eric, Eric this, Eric that. Had a degree in marketing, drove a Tesla, and apparently knew how to treat a lady. I'd smile and nod, pretending it didn't bother me, but inside, it felt like rust eating away at steel. Every ride to work started to feel colder. She'd fix her makeup in the mirror instead of looking at me. Her perfume filled the truck, but her attention didn't. One morning, I pulled up to her office and tried to kiss her goodbye. She turned her cheek instead and said, "Don't smudge my lipstick." I laughed awkwardly, but the silence that followed was brutal. That was the first time I sat in the truck after she left, staring at the building, wondering when exactly love had started to feel like a job I was failing at. The shift wasn't sudden, it was slow, like rust creeping over metal until it's too late to notice. Rachel's tone changed first. She stopped saying thank you when I drove her places. She'd sigh instead, like being in my truck was some kind of burden. I'd joke, "Hey, free chauffeur service," trying to lighten the mood, but she'd just roll her eyes. "Ethan, not everything's a joke." She'd snap, staring at her phone again. The sarcasm became sharper over time. If I bought her lunch, she'd point out how I always picked the cheapest thing on the menu. When I'd tell her about a difficult customer or a big repair job, she'd respond with, "Maybe if you'd gone to college like Eric, you wouldn't have to deal with that." I'd feel my chest tighten every time she said his name. One night, I was lying on the couch, exhausted, while she was in the kitchen, FaceTiming someone. Her laughter echoed through the apartment, the kind of laugh she hadn't shared with me in weeks. I caught a glimpse of her screen. It was Eric. She noticed me watching and slammed her laptop shut. "He's just a friend," she said flatly. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. I kept trying to make things right, cooked her favorite meals, fixed the cabinet she'd been complaining about, even surprised her with a bouquet on her desk one morning. But her reaction was always lukewarm. "You didn't have to," she'd say, barely glancing up from her emails. The next evening, I overheard her talking on the phone again. Her voice was soft, almost tender. He's sweet, but comfortable. Safe? Then she laughed. Yeah, not really the ambitious type. That was the moment something cracked inside me. I didn't say anything, just stood there in silence, realizing I'd been loving someone who'd already stopped seeing me as enough. I thought maybe all she needed was a reminder of how much I loved her. Something thoughtful, something that would make her remember who we used to be. For weeks, I saved up money quietly, taking on extra shifts at the shop. My hands were blistered, my back ached, but I didn't care. Every dollar brought me closer to the small jewelry store downtown, where I'd seen a silver necklace she once said was so elegant, but too expensive. When payday came, I skipped lunch, drove straight there, and bought it. The old lady behind the counter wrapped it in a velvet box and said, "She must be special." I smiled, even though part of me was already afraid that maybe she wasn't anymore. That night, I came home early. Rachel was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, wine glass in hand. "What's that?" she asked when I handed her the box. I told her, "Just something to show I appreciate you." She opened it slowly, glanced at the necklace, then shrugged. "It's nice, I guess. Not really my style anymore." My chest went hollow. "Oh," I said quietly, trying to smile. "I thought you'd like it. You mentioned it once." She waved her hand dismissively. "That was months ago, Ethan. I've grown since then." I sat there, silent, staring at her while she went back to her phone. The TV flickered in the background, the only sound between us. Later that night, I saw her post a selfie, wearing the necklace with the caption, "Small wins, no mention of me, no tag, nothing." The next morning, one of my friends texted, "Bro, she's acting like she's single." I stared at the screen for a long time, my stomach twisting. It wasn't the necklace that broke me. It was realizing that the person I bought it for didn't exist anymore. A few days later, the air between us felt heavier than ever. Rachel barely spoke during our morning drives, her focus glued to her phone while I tried to make small talk. That morning, it was raining hard, the kind of gray drizzle that soaks the world in silence. I'd gotten up early to warm the truck, made her coffee the way she liked it, 1 sugar, no cream. When I handed it to her, she just sighed, muttering, "You really need to get a new heater in this thing." I chuckled lightly, trying to brush it off. "Yeah, she's old, but she's still kicking," she scoffed. "Just like you, huh?" I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. What's that supposed to mean? Rachel didn't look up. Her thumb kept scrolling. "Nothing. I just meant, you're comfortable, Ethan, too comfortable. Some people have goals, you know." Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "I do have goals," I said quietly. "You know I'm saving to open my own shop," she laughed, not a playful laugh, but sharp mocking. "Right, your dream garage." Meanwhile, Eric's already getting promoted. That was it. Something inside me went still cold. I didn't yell. I didn't even look at her. I just turned down the next exit and pulled into a gas station. The rain was still coming down, splattering against the windshield. Rachel frowned. "What are you doing? We're going to be late." I parked, unbuckled my seatbelt, and said, steady as I could, "If I'm such a loser, maybe you should find another ride." She gave me this smirk, the kind that made me realize just how little she respected me. "Oh, please, you're not serious." I didn't answer. I just turned off the engine and waited. Rachel sighed dramatically, still scrolling through her phone like I was being childish. "You're overreacting," she muttered. "You always take everything so personally." I stared out at the rain, pounding the gas station awning. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "You called me a loser, Rachel, while I was driving you to work. Do you even hear yourself anymore?" She rolled her eyes, snapping her purse shut. "You're being ridiculous. It was just a joke. God, you're so sensitive sometimes." Then she unbuckled her seatbelt and muttered, "Whatever. I'll grab a drink. Maybe you'll cool off." She opened the door and stepped out into the drizzle, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. I watched her walk toward the convenience store, her umbrella barely shielding her perfect hair. For a moment, I actually waited, part of me expecting her to turn around, to realize how far she'd gone, to apologize. But she didn't. Instead, I saw her inside, leaning on the counter, phone in hand, laughing at a text. My stomach twisted. I already knew who it was from. That was the breaking point. Something inside me, the quiet, patient part that always forgave her, just died. I turned the key, and the engine roared to life. The sound felt different this time, liberating. I glanced once more toward the store. She hadn't even noticed I was watching. I whispered to myself, enough. Then I put the truck in gear. The wheels rolled forward, slow at first, then steady, until the gas station lights disappeared in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back. Not once. As the rain blurred the world around me, I felt this strange peace settle in. Not triumph, not revenge, just release. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It healed, and as the miles stretched ahead, I realized I'd finally driven away, not just from her, but from the version of myself that kept begging to be loved. I didn't make it far before my phone started buzzing. At first, it was a few missed calls. Then dozens. I ignored them all. When the ringing finally stopped, the texts began, one after another, filling the screen like bullets. Rachel, what the hell? Ethan. Rachel, come back right now. This isn't funny. Rachel, you embarrassed me in front of everyone. Rachel, you're a child. Grow up. By the time I pulled into a rest stop an hour away, she'd switched tactics. The anger turned into panic. Rachel, please, I can't believe you left me there. Rachel, just talk to me, okay? I didn't mean what I said. Rachel, you're scaring me. I'm sorry. I stared at the messages, thumb hovering over the screen. My heart was pounding, part of me wanting to answer, to explain, to comfort. But another part of me finally understood. I'd spent years apologizing for things I didn't do, trying to win love that only hurt me. I put the phone face down and let the rain tap against the windshield. For the first time, I didn't rush to fix things. I just sat there breathing. An hour later, my buddy Jason called. Dude, what happened? Rachel's posting all over social media. She says you left her stranded. I could hear the disbelief in his voice. I just said, yeah, I did. There was a long pause before he finally said, man, about time. That night, I checked into a cheap roadside motel. The sheets smelled like detergent and cigarettes, but it was the best sleep I'd had in months. My phone buzzed through the night, but I didn't touch it. By morning, there was only one unread message left from her. Rachel, you'll regret this. Maybe. But as I packed my bag, I realized I already didn't. Over the next few days, I tried to keep my head down and move on, but Rachel wasn't done. She turned my silence into her weapon. By the end of the week, her version of the story was everywhere. Mutual friends, coworkers. Even people from my old neighborhood started messaging me. She posted online, my boyfriend abandoned me at a gas station over a small argument. I guess true colors show when things get hard. The post exploded with sympathy. Comments poured in. What kind of man does that? And you dodged a bullet, girl. I stared at my screen, jaw clenched, heart pounding. Every word felt like a slap. I wanted to respond, to set the record straight, to show screenshots of the messages where she'd called me worthless. But I didn't. I'd spent too long explaining myself to people who didn't care about the truth. Instead, I deleted my social apps and focused on work. But it didn't stay contained. A customer at the shop joked, "Hey man, don't leave me stranded like your girlfriend." My coworkers laughed, thinking it was harmless fun. I forced a smile, but inside I was crumbling. Then came the twist, the part that burned more than anything. Rachel posted a picture with him. Eric, the coworker she used to just talk to, they were standing outside a fancy restaurant, smiling, champagne glasses in hand. The caption read, "Some men lift you higher." That line, that smug little line, was the nail in the coffin. It wasn't just that she moved on so fast. It was that she'd rewritten the whole story, turned me, the man who gave her everything, into the villain of her fairy tale. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at my phone screen, realizing I'd lost more than a relationship. I'd lost my reputation, and maybe a piece of myself too. The weeks that followed were the darkest I can remember. Everywhere I went, it felt like people were looking at me, whispering, judging. My coworkers treated me differently, half joking about the guy who ditched his girl. Even my boss asked if I was doing okay at home, like I'd somehow done something unforgivable. I stopped going out after work. I'd just drive home, eat whatever was left in the fridge, and stare at the ceiling until morning. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that gas station, her standing in the rain, the reflection of my own headlights fading away. After another long shift, I got a message from an unknown number. Unknown, she's been seeing him for months. You deserve to know. Attached was a photo, Rachel and Eric at a party months before we broke up. His hand on her waist, her smile a little too familiar. My stomach dropped. The timestamp didn't lie. I don't know how long I sat there staring at it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just went numb. Every memory, the mornings, the drives, the laughter, all of it suddenly felt fake, like a movie I'd been tricked into starring in that night. I walked outside and sat on the curb, the cold biting through my jacket. The world felt quiet, too quiet. For the first time, I didn't feel angry, just empty. I whispered to myself, "You gave her everything, man, and she still made you feel small." It hit me then. I'd been fighting to prove my worth to someone who had already decided. I had none. That was my rock bottom, sitting under a flickering streetlight. Realizing the woman I'd loved didn't just betray me. She broke the part of me that still believed love meant respect. Something changed in me after that night. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was survival. But when I woke up the next morning, I was done feeling sorry for myself. I didn't want revenge, and I didn't want her back. I just wanted myself back. I threw away everything that reminded me of Rachel, her old perfume bottle. The photos, the necklace receipt, still crumpled in my drawer. It wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming space. For the first time in months, my apartment felt quiet, not empty, but peaceful. I started focusing on work again. I volunteered for extra repairs, took night classes on business management, and slowly began putting money aside for the dream she once mocked. My own garage. My boss noticed the change. One evening, he said, "You've got good hands, Ethan. Ever think about running your own place?" I smiled. Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. It wasn't easy. The whispers, the humiliation, the loneliness. But I kept showing up, one day at a time. I stopped checking social media, stopped wondering what she was doing. I poured everything into fixing engines, saving money, and rebuilding the confidence she'd stripped away. I finally bought a small space, just a rundown workshop with oil stains on the floor and cracked tiles. But it was mine. I painted the walls, fixed the lighting, and hung a simple sign outside, Ethan's Auto Works. The day I opened it, I drove past that same gas station, the one where I left her, and felt something shift inside me. The pain wasn't gone, but it had turned into something stronger. That road used to feel like a memory I couldn't escape. Now, it felt like freedom, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a loser. I felt like a man who finally knew his worth. Nearly a year had passed since that rainy morning. Life had finally started to make sense again. My business was small but steady. The bills were paid, and I'd even hired a part-timer to help on weekends. I was busy, too busy to think about Rachel anymore. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Then one evening, as I was closing up the shop, I saw a message pop up on my phone. "Rachel, it's been a while. I hope you're doing okay." Asterisk, asterisk for a moment. I just stared at it. The name looked foreign, like someone I used to know in another lifetime. Against my better judgment, I opened it. She said she'd been thinking about me, that she missed how simple things used to be, that life hadn't gone the way she'd expected. The next few messages came fast. Eric had cheated on her. He'd been using her for connections, and when she confronted him, he dumped her. She said she was trying to start over, and thought maybe we could grab coffee. I sat in the quiet of my garage, the fluorescent lights humming above me. I could almost picture her perfect hair, perfect tone, acting like the past never happened. For a moment, I'll admit, a part of me wanted to respond, the part that remembered her laughter, the warmth of our early days. But then I remembered the way she looked at me in that truck, like I was beneath her, like my love was something she could outgrow. So I typed back, "I hope you're doing okay too, Rachel. But I think we've both moved on." She didn't reply. I set my phone down, leaned back against the wall, and smiled to myself. For the first time, it wasn't bitter. It was closure, quiet, complete, and entirely mine. A few weeks later, I was standing outside my garage, watching the morning sun hit the fresh paint on the sign, Ethan's Auto Works. The same neighbors who used to joke about me were now bringing their cars in for repairs. My hands were still rough, my clothes still smelled like oil, but this time, it meant something different. This wasn't struggle anymore. It was pride. Business picked up faster than I expected. Word spread about my honesty and fair prices, and soon I was booking appointments weeks in advance. One afternoon, as I was finishing a brake job, a sleek silver car pulled up a familiar model. For a second, my chest tightened. It was a Tesla. But it wasn't Eric. It was someone else, a young woman who smiled and said she'd been referred by a friend. Still, that moment, that sight, made me realize something. I wasn't the man left behind anymore. I was the one people came to. That night, I posted a photo online. Nothing flashy, just me standing in front of my shop. Arms crossed, grease on my hands, the sign behind me. The caption read, "Still fixing things, just not people anymore." Within an hour, the post blew up among friends and locals. Old coworkers, buddies, even customers left supportive comments, and I noticed her name in the viewer list, Rachel. No comment, no message, just a silent acknowledgement. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction, just peace. Because for the first time, I understood revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet. It's success. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. As I locked up for the night, I looked at the road stretching past the shop, the same one I once drove away on, and I smiled because this time I wasn't running from pain. I was driving toward my life.